Call to order the August board meeting of the Burleigh County Water Resource District to order. Wendy, take roll call, please.
Manager Mager.
Present.
Manager Mischel.
Here.
Manager Reed.
Here.
Manager Smith.
Here.
Chairman Landenberger.
Here, we have a quorum. We can continue with the agenda this morning. Moving on to item 2, approval of last month's meeting minutes. We get a chance to review those. Any changes? If not, entertain a motion.
Like to make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Got a motion by Manager Mager and a second by Manager Smith to approve last month's meeting minutes as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Ayes have it. Minutes are approved. Moving on to item 3, any amendments to the agenda? I think, Dennis, you had a few items you wanted to add this morning.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I think I'd like to add 2 to new business. Under item C, under new business, I would say summer meetings discussion. That should be brief. And then item D, just a brief discussion on a court case that affects us very minimally at best, but just like Dave Bliss to weigh in on a Koenig case.
Okay. Dave, you had information on that you sent out to the whole board, right?
Yes.
Okay, yep, that's what I was recalling. Okay. Anybody else want to add anything under new business this morning? I do want to add under, we'll call it item E then, our November, December board meeting dates. See if we can get an adjustment in there so we can talk about those dates there as well. Okay. Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Got a motion by Manager Reed and a second by Manager Mischel to approve the agenda as amended. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Oppose? Ayes have it. Agenda is approved. Moving on to item 4, comments from members of the public not associated with an item already on the agenda, but still part of the Burleigh County Water Resource District business. I'm not seeing anything this morning. So we can move on to McDowell Dam this morning. Starting off with item A there. I don't know, Michael, is there any updates regarding the supplemental water supply this morning?
Nothing specific other than we're going to be requesting the board on the supplemental water supply work completed with the preliminary engineering. So we now need to submit for design and construction as far as the grant process goes. So if the board would concur with that, we would need that in your minutes in order to show the State Water Commission that you directed us to apply for those funds.
Okay, and this would be for the final design?
Right, that's
And
correct.
then how about any bidding assistance in there?
No, they do not go to construction until final design is completed as far as funding goes.
Okay, so that'll be part of a different.
That'll be
future
second request,
contract.
correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just a
Yeah.
question on that. So in our packet, we have a cost share agreement that was signed for pre-construction.
Correct.
So what are you referring to?
Well, we go through pre-construction, now we go through final design.
But design is pre-construction.
Travis, I don't know if maybe you can address that one.
So, yeah, because this one was signed earlier this month based on our July meeting.
Correct.
Chairman, managers, I think what Michael might be referring to is
Oh.
the email that I sent regarding the Hogue Island work for the Dave Scheider
Yeah,
lot.
correct. Yeah, sorry about
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
I
so
was out
he's getting a little bit,
multitasking here.
Okay, so this is just more of an informational.
Correct.
Yeah, this was presented and have we heard anything back from the state at all?
On the final, the Hogue Island one, or?
No, on
this
this-
one?
yeah.
No, other than
Okay.
this was signed. I will do a couple of quick updates getting to this one. We have been looking at the pump design scenario. Initially, we had a single pump system. We're looking at a dual pump system now for a couple reasons. One is the efficiency of a dual pump system, plus the fact the ability to get the parts and materials and basically the electronics. Industry is really tight right now to getting that stuff, and we thought it's best to switch off and do a dual pump system. Gives you a little bit more flexibility from an operations perspective as well.
Okay.
So,
But-
sorry about the confusion.
So Michael, question on that then, would it be just one pump operates though? And then it would just be or is it, could they operate at the same time?
They would basically be operating at the same time.
Okay.
For full capacity.
All right.
But you could operate one at a lower.
If you had to replace one,
capacity
you
if
still
you
got
had
the
to.
capacity.
If some,
Yeah,
one
preserve
was
the
down, you'd
system.
always have operational.
Makes
Okay.
sense. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions regarding the supplemental water supply? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to item C, the aerator proposals. I think we have some guests here this morning, but Manager Mitchell, you got an update?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman Landenberger. Today, we have Ixom Water Care going to talk about and present on the circulation units and proposals for McDowell Dam. I believe everybody has gotten copies of those and had a chance to look them over. And so we have with us today, we have Bryce Hill, the regional manager, Josh Forsgren as our engineering manager, and Caleb Anderson as head of operations in the USA. So, gentlemen, thanks for coming, and the floor is yours.
Well, reminder too, we do have a sign up in the back of the room, so if anybody who hasn't signed in, if you could please sign in at least before you leave, just kind of who you are and who you're representing. Thank you.
Did you have the?
Yeah, it should be all loaded up already, I believe. Yep, there you go.
Good morning.
Morning.
Me and Chuck have been
And
kind
you-
of going back and forth through.
Sir, if you just use the microphone as
Yeah, you'll
much
have
as
to
you can,
use
because it
Yeah.
doesn't pick up very well for recording. Thank you.
Me and Chuck have been kind of going back and forth here for the last couple of months, discussing options and everything for McDowell Reservoir to reduce harmful algae blooms and just produce a overall better quality of, I don't know if you want to say life at the dam for anybody using it for recreation or anything like that. Because as everybody knows, the algae blooms and everything can be fatal, harmful for anybody involved. So I did bring Josh Forsgren with me. He's way better at the technical information as related to the solar bee. So as you can see, the solar bees are used quite commonly in freshwater lakes, ponds. We do a lot of work with golf courses, city ponds to prevent the algae bloom. And including recreational lakes where they exist among boats and swimmers and fishermen and everything else. So they are prone and adaptable to pretty much anywhere we put them.
Yeah, so the main function of them is we set an intake depth at the thermocline to kind of get below the hot water that's on the top layers, and then we get that cool, dense water. And it processes, our largest machine processes 10,000 gallons a minute, and it distributes a thin 2 or 3 inch layer of water out across the top of the surface, and it pushes out, and each machine can process up to 35 acres. So it helps bring up that cool water, and it kind of limits the action of the blue-green algae from coming to the surface and gaining that sunlight, and then they, it essentially chokes it out, and it'll fall to the ground, fall to the bottom. So. Yeah, it's not going to affect no baffles in the lake. So. So, yeah, some of the common issues with all this stuff is, the cyanobacterias, obviously the taste and odor is one of the biggest problems for these lakes and reservoirs and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of issues with fishermen, and they don't like, they have issues with fishing and just recreational purposes in general. They, as you can see, the picture there, that's a pretty gross looking lake, and that's what we try to improve on. And our machines are, they don't circulate really, really well, and they eventually get rid of all that gross green look and improves the color and odor, and you can see a lot deeper into the water. So that's a good look at one of our machines. They are free floating. We have anchors that keep them in place. We set them at specific locations depending on where kind of the deeper parts of the lake are. And we'll put them at the front end of kind of the inlet also, just to kind of get that fresh water coming in, get that circulated, make sure that's all moving around properly and distribute it out as efficiently as possible. We couple different orientations depending on, how many are required for each lake and reservoir, depending on the size and shape of the reservoir. So I believe for what we've looked at on McDowell Dam, I think we looked at 2 or 3 to adequately reach all of the surface. So 100% solar powered, and the solar power actually charges a battery, and the battery is used overnight so that we can operate 24/7. The three panels that we use are 100-watt Voltaic panels, and they operate very, very well. And if they have room to spin around, and they absorb sunlight all day long. And even within some of the more cloudy days, and if there's say 3-4 days of clouds, the machine will still run off of that battery power and limited sunlight. So everything's made out of stainless steel, except for the floats. It's a very durable polyethylene, and they're foam filled, and they have up to 1,400 pounds of buoyancy. So even if there's somebody decides to be crazy and jump on it, they won't be sinking the machine or anything like that. As I said, the 35 acres, we have SCADA available options, so there's ability to read some of the data from that machine and present that to yourselves. We also have HiveLinks is a system that we have instituted. It's a online program that sends up to the cloud, sends all the data from the machine up to the cloud, and it's accessible on a website that we would be able to hook up and provide for you. And for the frames alone, they're a 25-year expectancy. The hoses are very, very durable as well. They need a little bit of cleaning here and there probably once a year, which is a service that we also provide if we were to go that route. So, yeah, and then as you can see, approximately a quarter-mile spacing, depending on what we need and what type of area that we need to cover. So sometimes, depending if it's deeper, maybe you need a little bit more, coverage or have them closer together. But for the depth that McDowell is, I don't think there's going to be too much necessity to be any closer. So this is kind of a good representation of what I kind of mentioned as far as setting down at the thermocline below the warm layer of the water, and then the distributes out across the top, and as the cool water's going out, it tends to circulate that top above the thermocline. And the technology that we have, actually, where we set our intake plate, it only pulls from that plane. So you won't be affecting anything below the intake plate. So wherever we set that at, say it's, if it's 20-foot depth, we'll set it about 10, 11 feet deep for meeting that thermocline. It won't pull from anywhere below that 10 or 11 feet deep. So it comes from that one straight plane. No effect to wildlife, no issues with fish, no issues with any other wildlife that happen beyond the reservoir and lakes. So, but yeah, that's another good representation of just kind of how it creates a direct flow and also creates an induced flow in that upper plane with all the dense water that we're pulling up. So, yeah, so we have a lot of different applications. One of these is we're kind of talking about wastewater where we're setting at 2 feet, but you're good there. So, this is hypolytic. This is more of a deeper situation where if we're looking at improving on iron, manganese, or any other kind of heavy metal issues, this gets set down closer to the bottom of the lake where we're, really processing all that down lower and kind of get that oxygenated water, get that unoxygenated water up to the top and get that circulating around too, so. But that's more, like I said, that thermocline application is more for the blue-green algae of what we're kind of discussing, so. No, that's kind of the representation of what it would look like for the deep water hypolimnetic circulating, so. Yep, and I guess as far as the hose goes and the settings go, it's adjustable. We can add different depths if you need, once we get them on there. If it's not doing quite what we need, we can come out, check the depths of where the thermocline is, and we can adjust the hose as is. The hoses come in 10 and 20 foot sections, but we can add on if we need to go to any deeper than that, so. Yeah, we've got solar bees all over the country. Canada, some in Guam, Mexico,
Just installed some in Scotland or Ireland.
Scotland and Ireland. We got one in France. We've got a lot of proving ground of function and actual success stories. So they're very efficient, very adequate to process as much water as possible. Each solar bee actually can, if you compare it to an aeration system, each solar bee can actually offset 30 to 40 horsepower motors. So you're maybe looks like a little bit more upfront cost, but a lot of times in 2 to 3 years, your power savings actually, you make up that difference very quickly. So.
Yeah.
So. This is kind of showing that you can kind of see that there's a ripple effect coming from that solar bee. It's a very, very laminar flow, and you really don't notice it, but if you're really sitting there looking at it, you can tell it's moving. It's very, as far as efficiency, the impeller rotates at 80 RPM, and it still pulls a 3,000 gallon direct flow and induces 7,000 gallons per minute induced flow. Yep. So.
Yeah, so it's not aesthetic wise and everything like that. For the most part, you don't really notice them unless you're looking for them. Oh yeah, there we go.
There's the proof of buoyancy.
Yeah. I don't think we had those at McDowell Dam, do we, Dave? No. Okay.
That's a whole different movie.
So, this is kind of a good representation of, you can kind of see the green, the really bright green look around the dock there, and then against the shore. That solar bee was put in, after, I'd say, a couple weeks to a month, you'd probably see a good effect like that. Sometimes quicker, depending on the depth and the level of bloom that you're seeing too. So,
But if you get them placed right away in the spring before it gets warm enough for algae blooms to even begin to form, it'll prevent them from ever coming around.
yeah, the main comment there is that we're not going to completely, we won't remove the bloom right away. It'll dissipate, but come next year, come the spring, it'll keep all that algae from actually forming, and the bloom won't even form.
So Josh, the cyanobacteria, is that the one that causes the blue-green
Yes.
algae?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. The cyanobacteria is the blue-green algae.
Is that the cyan? The
yeah.
blue? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Platte River. Yeah. That was one of our big power station in Colorado. As you can see, I kind of mentioned the horsepower replacement. We had replaced 200 horsepower of their aeration system, and they improved their water quality immensely. And they used that water for kind of their cooling system through that power plant, and they pretty much got rid of their blue-green algae issue within a few months, and over a year it never came back. So.
Is that, Josh, is that because of the residual that it dissolved oxygen that carries
Yep.
over throughout the winter and stuff?
Yep. They'll continue through the winter. They actually have a power system where they will shut down over the winter. So as it freezes, it will sense that it's freezing and could be that restriction, and they will shut down and go to a hibernation mode unless the water stays open. But they'll actually keep the water open for a while longer as the freezing comes in. And then once thaw comes, they will fire back up again on their own. So as they process that cool water in the spring, it keeps all that cyanobacteria down below the surface and keeps it from coming back.
Yeah, so,
That's another case study that we got, but,
yeah.
so.
How big are they?
The float radius is about 12 foot, 12 to 15 foot.
Yeah, so the full circle is about a 12-foot
the-
diameter.
The dish is about a 6 foot diameter. They weigh about 800 pounds. So moving them is not the most simple project, but as I said, we have a bunch of service teams around that move all over the country, and a few of them live right here in town, actually. So, I mean, there's a possibility for real easy service and maintenance, so.
Your photos with the three that you kind of had showing the, kind of a typical, is that the one you have quoted here, the V20? Is that the
Yep.
10,000 gallon per minute? That's your largest one?
That's the largest one, yeah. The
Okay.
Solar B10,000 is the largest frame model that we have.
Okay,
Yep.
and that's, in the photos, that's the one that shows
Yep.
with the three? Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
correct.
Do you have any installations, sorry Dennis, do you have any installations nearby? The other question I was gonna ask, similar to the situation we have, a small recreational lake and.
Yeah, we have one in Hettinger.
Okay.
We have wastewater pond actually in Mandan that we have one on, and that's actually for a blue-green algae application. Obviously, it's not a recreational, but it's still doing the same process.
Bully pulpit,
Yeah, got one out at Burleigh.
we got 2 of them out there in 2 separate ponds.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Hettinger just got a new one, and they're looking at another new one.
What's the situation in Hettinger? Is it a
Just
reservoir?
out- Yep, the reservoir.
Okay.
Yep,
Yep.
Okay.
Mirror Lake.
Mirror Lake. There you go. I was
The
trying to remember.
Mandan Treatment Center, how big of a system is that, or what model is that?
I think
That's not the 10,000?
no, that's a 5,000. So
Okay.
that's the next one down. That's
Because like that South Beach area, obviously you're not gonna have the depth there, so a smaller one in addition to larger ones for the main reservoir might be of value.
Yep, yep. No, so I did say the hoses come in 10-foot lengths, but we chain them up if we need to go any shallower. And then for the wastewater side of it too, there's just odor capping version where it's only about 6 to 10 inches below the surface. So
Okay.
We have the proposals for one, or for two units, and we got that proposal, and then we also discussed about the rental units and everything as well. Can you guys just kind of touch on that a little bit?
So there is there is the option to purchase them outright, and it's a larger cost up front. But then there's also the option to buy service contracts and that kind of thing with your purchased machine. Whereas with the rental, it's a fee every year depending on how many months you rent them for. But then they're constantly under the maintenance of IXM. So there are machines, we're responsible for them unless somebody happens to crash into one or anything like that. As far as parts and labor and all that kind of goes, it's all handled by us. Whereas with the purchasing them outright, you own them, but then, like I said, you have to buy that service contract each year too, if you want our crews to come out, do the maintenance as far as cleaning the solar panels, replacing any parts that are broken or just worn out, anything like that.
Okay. And then the preventive maintenance is part of that as well?
Correct.
That contract?
The contracts, we can either do a once a year or twice a year visit, depending on whether you want us to pull them out or anything like that. Most people do a once a year visit in the spring, just make sure everything's up and running and ready to go for the year. But we do have customers that do the twice a year as well. Just depends on what their needs are.
So the optional service plan that you have listed here, for the 7,000, is that, can you maybe explain a little bit what that one is? Yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you.
I'll jump in as well. So the optional service plan is our preventative maintenance plan. So the guys will come out, they'll actually check everything that's functioning on the machine, clean it off, replace anything that's necessary. It's kind of an extension on the pre-existing warranty, is how it works. So there's an initial warranty. After that would be then when you would purchase that preventative maintenance plan. With the rental program, that's just kind of rolled into that price. So
Makes sense.
the benefit is if you purchase the machine outright, you'll be spending less money over the 15 to 20, 25 years you own this machine. If you rent it, it is a little bit more, but it also, there's a little bit of an ease of mind, and it's more of an operational expense as opposed to a capital expense because it's lower.
Yep.
So,
Is that an annual cost in that 7,000 for that?
yes, yep, that would be annual, and you can set the contracts up to be multi-years, single years, and then those do obviously increase over time with inflation, gas, all those things as well. So they're, they're not locked in at one price forever, but they are negotiated with you guys every year if you did want to keep extending it. We've got people that have had those for 20 plus years. These machines last an extraordinarily long time, and we, because of that preventative maintenance plan, are able to maintain them very well throughout that time. Like these guys have talked about, we have around a 20-person service team. They're kind of based all over the U.S., and they service things from North Dakota to Florida to Australia. Like these guys are everywhere. But several of them, including our field service manager, are based in Bismarck. So,
Good, okay. All right. Thank you.
And these contracts are six-month contracts for rental?
6 month is the lowest term you could do. You could do longer. So we're open to do as long as you'd like. If you want to negotiate a 5-year one off the rip, I'm sure we can make that work. I can talk to our finance guy. So, but 6 month is the lowest amount we do for the rental, just so if you do want them seasonally, we're able to put them in for those 6 months and then pull the machine out. It can, kind of be hit or miss on getting the team back out here to get those in time. So that is kind of the thing with doing a longer one. If you are going to keep them year over year over year, it's easier to just do a multi-year off the rip. We keep them here, and then we're able to maintain them for you. Otherwise, we just have to organize installation and so on every year with you. So,
So if we're renting them, then you pull them in the winter and store them?
we can, unless you're planning on just continuing to rent them through it. And they, as Josh kind of mentioned earlier, they're capable of being out there through the winter. If anything happens to them during the winter, because of the freeze or because someone decides to jump on them in the middle of the winter or whatever it is, when we get out in the spring for that service plan, we'll check them, make sure they're good to go, and then get them repaired. So, and the big benefit to the rental is, like I said, the lower capital expenditure right away, and it's not your problem, right? It's like leasing a vehicle. I know I'm going to hand this back at the end of the day, worst case scenario. So it kind of allows you guys to just write this off. This is how much it'll be month over month, and this problem's taken care of. And we're right next door, so we can take care of that for you.
That yellow downdraft hose, is that collapsible? So like if they want to pull it up into a bay, it just pulls up and
It is, yes.
In our situation, would you guys recommend we keep them in there all winter? I know we've had conversations kind of with Bismarck Parks and Rec, who, helps operate and maintain our system out there. And, just, we probably want to visit with them some more, but is that something you guys would recommend, that we would just keep them in there throughout the winter?
I personally think it's kind of the easiest option for you. It reduces that amount of time where you have to try to set up an install window whenever things start to thaw. Do they thaw early? Do they thaw late? And trying to kind of organize that. It allows it to be right out there as soon as things start, so we are able to get in front of any algae blooms, and kind of reduces the headache for you guys and for us on a scheduling side. So,
Is there any concern if we want to kind of override and shut down, let's say November 1st? There's ice fishing and stuff out there.
Right.
Just from a safety standpoint, can we override and shut them down so we don't create weird ice or?
yeah, we
Okay,
definitely
yeah.
can.
No, just freezing around it and.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be our preference, is
Yep.
because of the ice fishermen potentially.
Yep. And with Hive Links, which is our kind of remote platform there, and we're currently working on an extension of that. It's a newly developed kind of remote monitoring platform, and that's going to keep extending with a lot of new ads that we're working on currently in R&D. That is one where you'd be able to kind of actually look into those machines, see what's going on, and make sure they're not running when you need them to, or if they are, making sure they're running full capacity. It also allows our team to use that for preventative maintenance as well. So if we're seeing an issue, we can reach out to you and say, hey, we're seeing something on one of these machines. Would it be all right if we're out on this date? So,
Okay.
They could see this information on their phones.
yes, through a website, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Dennis, do you have a question?
I did have lots of questions, but most of them got asked. Under the purchase agreement, what is the warranty? You alluded to a warranty. I mean,
I believe the initial warranty is
2 years.
2 years.
You guys
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. And that's 2 years for anything with that machine that goes on. We'll take care of it. And then, like I said, pretty much the moment you're getting close to the end of that 2-year purchase agreement warranty, we then reach out to say, hey, we'd love to sign you up for our preventative maintenance plan. We call it Beekeeper, Solar Bee. Makes a lot of sense there. So we immediately reach out. We try to get you signed up for that, just in case anything was to happen. And even if you did not want to pursue that preventative maintenance program, we do offer quoted service. So if anything was to ever happen with the machine, we have plenty of people who take that option as well. We then quote that specific cost to you, and then we schedule that as well.
Okay. All you had, Dennis?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
I don't know, Chuck, I think maybe just a thought here. I'm wondering maybe if we have Houston kind of take a look at, the quote
Yeah.
and the specs and because we have 2 quotes now for something similar, and just see maybe what Houston's got some thoughts or ideas. And then I would like to get, Bismarck Parks and Rec's kind of
Oh, yeah.
thoughts on some of this as well, and maybe we could visit with them. And so, if we are thinking about moving forward, if we decide to, it'd probably be like this fall sometime, I'm guessing, and then probably for an installation next year. Is that doable timeline, I assume?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just one other thing, I think we maybe talked about at last meeting as well. I would like somebody from the Department of Environmental Quality or some specialist, lake specialist, that would offer us some insight as to the need, the benefits of such systems for our situation, I guess. So
Yeah.
I'd like that to happen at some point as well.
Well, and
Yeah.
to that point then, Manager Reap, I did try to contact Marty Harrelson and left a message with him. He was on vacation, and I've been waiting to hear back from him, so I'll follow up with him again.
Okay.
So,
I think it'd be prudent to talk to Game and Fish, Fishery Department.
Chuck did do that, I think, and
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yep,
they're
yep.
aware and.
Yep. What was the gentleman's name again?
Bailey,
Yeah.
Paul Bailey. Yep.
Yep, Paul Bailey. I talked to him, and he was pretty much on board with all of that, and he could see the benefits from that.
Sure.
And,
Because they stock McDowell.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and I don't know if they're having dissolved oxygen issues in the winter. Some winters anyway, they probably do. There might be times that we would potentially run it just to save a fishery.
Sure.
Kick it up earlier in the spring, maybe, or
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think initially having them running, and like we say, we go into the winter time and everything, and that residual dissolved oxygen is still being maintained in there. That's just gonna be fuel for the fire for spring when we start up and everything. We're gonna be ahead of the game more so than we have been in the past. So,
Okay. And then I don't know what sort of, potential funding or grant options there might be for things of this nature, if there's, but something maybe we could look into as well. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. Appreciate the presentation and background. Like I said, on the prior analysis for the reservoir, as part of the overall water quality and stuff, and the TMDL study, we did look at this, and Solar Bee was one of the ones that we considered at that point in time. So I think you're right, going back and having consultation with Game and Fish, DEQ, and then looking at the augmented water supply scenario. We have a treatment system at the end of that. I think one of the things we'd want to do is just evaluate that versus this. You're still going to need water, so you don't have a water scenario, but what does that treatment system look like, and does it need to be modified or maybe adjusted based on what this may actually provide to the system? And that's kind of a DEQ question as well as game and fish. So we would probably do a consultation meeting with all the, if you want to call them jurisdictional parties, and say, hey, let's have a conversation as to what we're doing, what you're planning, and where this goes and how it fits into the overall management picture for the lake. So with your consensus, we would set something up, and again, probably go into this fall and winter and see where it goes into spring. So.
Yeah, I think board, is that kind of consensus?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Chuck, just kind of work with Michael, and
Yep.
I would like to, like I said, have a review of kind of the two quotes and just kind of see how we're getting to an apples to apples comparison
Absolutely.
as best we can. Okay,
Yep.
thank you. All right. Anything else on McDowell Dam this morning? If not, we can move on to item 6, the South Bismarck Flood Control Project. We did have some guests last month that kind of gave us an update on what they're looking at doing for that project. And then in your packet, on page 16, is the letter of support that we were sending to the Department of Water Resources, with my signature, basically just thanking them for our opportunity to comment, and that we believe it's a good project and provides adequate consideration for any future changes. So I think we're probably good there, Michael, as far as what we got to do as correspondence.
Yeah, that's correct. As far as the application, I do not believe the application's been fully submitted yet, but it will be. This letter will be basically prevent that 45-day timeline from
Right.
impacting the overall process from moving forward. As you'll note, along with that, I created the BFE memorandum, which I think is important, looking to the board today to share that memorandum with the various planning and zoning in the city of Bismarck. City of Bismarck already has it because it's part of the letter transmittal. But
This is on page 17 of the packet.
correct.
Yep.
Been working on this for a while, finally got around to finishing it up. Obviously, the value is here at the moment to actually put this in place. But that advisory basically points out the issue with the Hawaii Delta Formation, and that within 10 to 15 years, the situation or the bathymetry in the river is likely to come back to what it was before. So even though we've had a reduction in the BFE based on the FEMA study for scour, it wasn't as much because it was offset a little bit by the new flows, but the BFE will continue to increase. The next time we do a study, the BFE is going to be higher. The connection or nexus, if you will, with the South Bismarck project is, if you're designing that project, did you take into account these increases that might happen in the future? And the answer is yes. So that's important. The next piece of it is to get it out to planning and zoning and saying, hey, there probably should be an advisory put out to people who are building that, though you're building the current FEMA standards, or shall I say FEMA's program under the county and city ordinances, you still have risks that are going to be occurring at a later point in time. And you should be aware of those. If you choose not to build to them, you can. But if you also choose and say, hey, I recognize this is coming, I'm going to have my builder go another foot higher, that's obviously an advantage to the public as well as the individual who's building. So it's an advisory, it's not a mandate. We're not requesting, or you wouldn't request changes to the ordinance, but it puts it out there for people to be aware of it.
Yep.
So with your consensus, we would transmit this memo to those parties, and they can do as they wish with it.
Okay.
So.
Dennis, good question
Michael,
for-
I know I saw it in here. How far upstream does this study show the effect of that delta?
Let me go back to the table. The table goes all the way to the north limit of the 2005 FEMA model, which is basically north end of Misty Waters, or just upstream from that, about it's 8-9 miles. Goes from 1319 to 1328.
Okay, so you didn't chase it all the way down, but
No.
somewhere in that region probably.
Yeah. I guess the most important ones, and you look right through the Bismarck-Mandan area, Memorial Bridge, BNSF Railroad, you're seeing that 1 foot rise in the BFE from the current FEMA model, or the current standards that are there today.
Yeah, it actually goes up to almost 1329, so
Right.
it goes quite
Yeah.
a ways north.
Yeah, it goes to the
Okay.
end, basically Burleigh County line.
Okay.
You'll notice it's kind of interesting, we do not have in this model, or as the simulation is done, we actually don't have much of an increase at the upper end. But that's just the, functionality of the river. We did notice a scour at the southern end. We noticed some increase in elevations in the Hogue Island area because of sedimentation. It's all a matter of what the river's doing. The river's going to do what it's going to do. So this is a snapshot in time based on available data. It's not an absolute. I did note in here that at the point in time when we were starting all this stuff, there was a sediment transport model that was being discussed, where you could make a projection based on current flow dynamics and stuff in the river, but there wasn't enough funding for that. So, but this gives you an indication that that is out there, and the changes are going to continue.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, board consensus to have Michael send this out. Okay. Thanks, Michael.
Yep.
Okay, that's all we have on the South Bismarck flood control. We can move on to item 7 this morning, the Misty Waters, Missouri River setback variance request. I don't know, Mitch, do you want to start? Maybe have Mitch just kind of give us a general update, Scott, and then we can have you up. Yep. Morning, Mitch.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, I was approached by Mr. Scott Sterling last month about building a house on Misty Waters Drive, lot 29. I asked him for the information, building plans, a lot exhibit and that sort of thing. He sent me this lot exhibit, which shows the proposed location of the house. And on it, it also has the 100-foot setback, which is right along the, you see that dash line with, on the left side, it says 100-foot setback?
Yep.
The first lot exhibit that he sent neglected to include this. So when he sent me this, I said, well, there's no way I can issue a building permit for this. Reinforce this setback. We've denied other permits previously because of this. And it's been in effect for long before I got here. And so he wants the variance to that. Not just for this lot, but for 4 other houses too, 4 other lots. So they have, I was not here for the meeting last week, which I had a reunion out of state, but I do have the team's meeting notes from Mr. Gunch, Michael Gunch, that list some of the information that was gathered for this. The process is he seeks a variance to the Planning Commission, and then either it's denied or approved, recommended denied or recommended approved. If it's denied, he can appeal that to the county board. And if that's denied, then he can appeal it to district court. So that's where we're at with this right now.
Michael, you have
Okay,
question?
Mr. Chairman, Mitch, thank you for the introduction on that. What I'm going to do is go through the current status of the bank stabilization requirements as they exist today, and the needs of the project to actually proceed. There's a long history out here with that particular bank line. You can see on page 47, there's been some significant erosion that has already occurred along that bank in the neighborhood of 100, basically 68 to 100 feet. That's already eroded, that's disappeared since the development was put in place. Understand that this development was originally permitted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and they did not allow bank stabilization to occur along the Missouri River. Now there's don't know whether you call it a change in thought or something, that they've issued a nationwide permit for a single lot. That creates a number of issues. So I'm going to step back through the changes in the setback. This particular board back in November of 2015, it's on page 44, actually passed a resolution that your position relative to bank stabilization, relative to development behind the bank, is 100 feet from the top of the bank. Now, that was a conversation at the time with the City of Bismarck. City of Bismarck standard is 100 foot from the top of bank, or excuse me, 100 foot from the ordinary high water mark. And the City of Bismarck's ordinary high water mark is the state of North Dakota's. The county ordinary high water mark is at 33,000 CFS. There's a kind of a scenario there. But at that, this was at one point a City of Bismarck plat, was an ETA. So the 100-foot standard that was in by the city was also included in the PUD for this particular development. So I'll step into the PUD stuff in a little bit. The current Burleigh County ordinance has a 100-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark at 33,000 CFS on an unprotected bank, and a 75-foot setback on a protected bank. Let me qualify the two. Obviously, the 100-foot setback is slightly different than the board's resolution, which is fine. The board's resolution is kind of a non-jurisdictional one. You don't get to tell the county what its ordinance is, but it's an advisory. So the county ordinance in this case, in a non-county area, or in a non-ETA area, would govern. So there'd be 100 foot, and if you have a protected bank, it'd be 75 foot. The critical component when remembering a protected bank is it's a designed protected bank. It's not contractor rock thrown over the side of the bank on top of the sandbar. Give you a prime example of what happens when you do that was the Hogue Island scenario, where it was a bunch of unpermitted, actually, private rock that was put in between the jetties. When they failed, they lost anywhere from 30 to 50 feet of their property. That is an unprotected bank. On a protected bank, if you have losses, they would be smaller and you'd be able to keep up to what's going on out there. So the protected term is very important to understand that particular context. The ordinary high water mark, like I said, the rock cannot extend into these sovereign lands. I believe Scott has dealt with or talked to Amy Winkleman with the state and DWR and adjusted it, because the same thing we had at Hogue Island, you can't extend the rock out into the sovereign lands. So in other words, you have to pull the bank back, which in this particular case, when you're looking at the ability to develop that lot, pulling it back takes a little bit of a number of feet off of that developable property and how you actually put that together. So that was the scenario. I can honestly say, full disclosure, I worked with Steve McCormick to attempt to get this area stabilized early on. The Corps said no. We did several attempts from that point forward to try and get it stabilized. The Corps said no. The Corps said no primarily because they determined that this was not a currently actively eroding bank. Now, the Corps, in their nationwide permit, the rules haven't changed in my understanding, but they call this an eroding bank. It's an eroded bank, it's not eroding. So I'm not sure how they're issuing a nationwide, given the past history, but I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. I will say that if, in fact, the Corps has agreed that this area can now be stabilized, that the entire bank should be stabilized. That would be a protected status. That protected status would basically put this property in a position to where, based on the county ordinance at 75 feet, that they would gain an additional 25 feet within those lots to actually develop. And I think that's a prudent step, but I don't think any building permit or anything should be issued until that permit is there and until that stabilization is actually in place. I do not agree from a technical standpoint that stabilizing a single lot is a prudent action in this case. There's too many risks of that failure of that individual lot, and therefore that goes back to the individual home. Is there the opportunity for other lots to be developed up there very similar? Yes, it all needs to be stabilized if in fact that's going to occur. Now the conundrum that comes here, first of all, is that I'm not sure where the Corps is at relative to a individual permit, because the minute you try to do all of these, it will go to an individual permit status, which means the review will go back to Omaha, it won't be reviewed locally. So that's just kind of a shift in review criteria. What comes down in the bottom line of this is that the PUD, which was developed under the city of Bismarck, it's now in the county because of the change in ETA status. That PUD has restrictions on that setback at 100 feet. So in order to go to 75, it would require a modification to that PUD. So it's not a modification of the ordinance. I do not believe at any point in time that you would want to waive the setback at all. Even if you did waive the setback's going to be governed or trumped by the PUD criteria. So in this condition, it's not the ordinance that drives everything, it's the PUD itself. That being said, they had another lot layout, which I questioned, I was a little concerned about it, where they modified the front setback to be 35 feet from the back of curb. That just doesn't work. That's not even allowed. It's 35 feet from the lot line. Now, if there's a desire to modify that and go to 25 feet or go to something less, that also would have to be a PUD change. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? Maybe not. I can tell you that I have met with the homeowners association. They recognize that anything that's changed out there has to go through the PUD process. They do not have the ability to change the PUD themselves. That has to go through planning and zoning. They do have covenants which govern certain things, and the covenants have a very high rate or need for everybody to approve before things happen. There's a long history of setback issue relative to floodplain, that there were multiple lawsuits and things that went through, and there was a lot of consternation in that whole development relative to that. One of the contexts of this is that if both of those setbacks were considered for modification, I'm not going to say you can't, but if they were considered for modification, that the notice of that modification go to the entire PUD, which means everybody out there. This isn't a notice of a particular area within X number of feet for a zoning change. It's a PUD. It involves the whole entire development. So any modification of that PUD should be noticed to the entire development, which means at this point in time, looking at it from the district's perspective, we would recommend that any request to the Burleigh County Planning and Zoning be delayed until the PUD modifications are completed and adequate protection is permitted for construction. That's a bottom line on this. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get to that point, but the scenario is that the PUD is going to govern what's here. Your recommendation or your standpoint from a board back in 2015 was 100 foot from the top of bank. I don't know that you'd want to deviate from that. Wouldn't think there'd be any reason to. But the modification here comes to the PUD itself. And again, I think the critical component is not just the PUD, but to actually make sure that the full stabilization can occur, because in order to get to 75 foot under the county ordinance or under the 75 foot under a modified PUD, you have to have a protected bank. And I have made some comments internally about the layout and the design that they have that I find is inadequate currently. So, long story short, open for questions.
Maybe before we go to questions with Michael, go ahead, Mitch.
I might add on the PUD, that would take an amendment. It would be public hearings at the Planning Commission, and then that would again go to the County Commission for final approval.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be a two-step process for that. They can't just amend it themselves. That'd be a public hearing with the actual PUD examined, all the changes, all the proposed changes.
And that would be, moving forward, this PUD that would be rewritten essentially for those setbacks.
Right, and just a background scenario, the PUD was just rewritten in June, I think it was published June 19th of 2025 because of the floodplain setback. There's been a lot of changes to this PUD over the years, and there's been, again, a lot of involvement and interest of all the property owners up there relative to changes in that. So there's a, if you want to call it a public relations issue, that probably should be started in order to have conversations with those folks and see what their appetite is, for lack of a better thing. I mean, obviously, they can't dictate. It goes through planning and zoning. But when you're having a lot of people impacted, they're probably going to come to the table and have questions. So.
Okay, maybe before we go to questions, maybe I'll invite Scott up to kind of walk through his.
Can I ask just one, Mitch, before you go, can I just ask one basic question? So PUD was adopted by the city of Bismarck. Now this is ETA, and so this becomes administrative responsibility of Burleigh County.
Absolutely,
And so that PUD does carry over as it exists right now?
as it exists, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, would you like to? Thanks, Scott.
Good morning, Chairman and managers. First of all, thank you for the time today, for me being able to present this variance request. I am representing 6 lots, so not just 28 through 31 when you look at Exhibit 1. I have talked to lot owners for 27 and 32 as well. Those are all 6 lots that are currently unstabilized that I will be applying this variance for, those 6. The purpose of this variance is to establish reasonable and buildable setbacks for lots 27 through 32, while also encouraging permanent stabilization of the riverbank. So as we look at Exhibit 1, or that first page, you'll see where the original plots were laid out, where that the bank was in 2003 when the development was created. During several high water years, the bank eroded back, as you can see where the new high bank is. It was just surveyed in June at that 33,000 CFS mark. With the current setback for the county ordinance, which is 100 feet from the ordinary high water mark, you can see on that exhibit right there where that 100-foot setback is. And then I also, on that exhibit, you can see the 35-foot setback from the property line. So there's approximate 20 feet from the back of the curb to the property lines, and then 35 feet from the property line, which helps create that that red shaded polygon, which is the buildable areas. So with those small pieces, that's the point of this variance, is because we're trying to get as much buildable area as we can, because those are just not buildable lots as they stand. With the county ordinance at 75 feet with a stabilized bank, we do respect the river and that ordinance, and so the current covenants and the PUD is 35 feet for those river lots from the property line. I just want to point this out. And it's 25-foot setbacks from the interior lots in Misty Waters. So there already is smaller setbacks for certain areas. If we go to Exhibit 2, this is the exhibit that Mitch was showing. You can see that 100-foot setback going through that front of the house. And then the 35-foot setback from the property line. So that just really illustrates how narrow the buildable area is. And then Exhibit 3, page 3. You can see with a stabilized bank, the 75-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark, which is at 33,000 CFS, and where the house footprint would be. And then as I was pointed out on this exhibit, we did set the house back only 35 feet from Missy Waters Drive. So that would only be 15 feet approximately from the property line. So you have the 10-foot utility easement that would still, we would still clear, and then a 5-foot approximately from there, the house footprint would start. And then you have a buildable lot. That would give us a total, if we could gain 20 feet from the riverside, the roadside, or a combination of, that would allow all of these lots to be buildable. Even the shortest lot, the narrowest one, I think that was lot 30, would have approximately 55 feet of buildable space at that point. And then I wasn't sure if you guys needed it. Page 4, Exhibit 4, there is just the bank stabilization plan that Tolman Engineering helped create. So again, the purpose for this variance request is to establish reasonable and buildable setbacks for lots 27 through 32, while also encouraging permanent stabilization of the bank. For lot 29, which I am the owner of, I have demonstrated the clear commitment to completing the bank stabilization properly through the appropriate regulatory process. So coordination with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and North Dakota Department of Water Resources, I began that in January, and the permit applications were submitted in February and March. Since that time, the proposed stabilization plan has continued to be refined in response to agency comments and engineering recommendations. I have commitments from the other adjacent lot owners that they will continue with their bank stabilization permits and applications as well, and join my stabilization efforts. Because we do understand that just stabilizing my bank is a failure. I mean, we all know that probably in this room, right? So I do have a approved permit through the Corps of Engineers right now. We met with Sovereign Lands on site 3 weeks ago, and I did resubmit some information that they were requesting. So I'm waiting to hear back from them to have a approved permit there. Let's see. So ultimately, we are requesting the variance that provides practical and consistent setback for those 6 lots, recognizing the unique configuration of them. Without a change to the current ordinance, these lots will not be buildable, meaning that the private landowners have no incentives to stabilize the banks, which will haunt this development in the county for years to come during every high water event. Erosion will continue. Properties both with and without structures will be threatened, along with the infrastructure and the public roadways. So it's really in our best interest to get that bank stabilized, especially now that there's changes with the Corps, and Sovereign Lands seemed on point with that, and then we could have some buildable lots, hopefully. If appropriate, I would just like to open this up to the other lot owners or the developer, my builder, anybody else that might have comments at this time. Anyone has anything? Any questions?
Any questions for Scott?
Oh, hold on, got one.
You wanted-
Oh.
Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner Managers. My name is Wade Vogel. I own Premier Homes in Mandan, North Dakota. I've done a lot of building, a lot of developing on the Missouri River, and I understand all the things that come into trying to build a home on the river. Just a couple things that I wanted to point out that I don't know are exactly correct, or that were, interpreted, but the 35-foot setback, that is actually 55 feet from the road, because there's 20 foot from the road and there's another 35 feet from the property line. So these houses on this particular street on the riverside are 55 feet from the road, and on the opposite side of the street, they're only 35 feet. So I don't know if that was clearly stated, but that's the way I believe it is. To Scott's point, if this area ever had an opportunity to be stabilized, I think the time is now. Mr. Gunch is correct that this area has been a burden for a while. It's been tried to be developed for a long time. And I don't know if it's a changing of the guard at the Corps, but the Corps is on board now. So I think it's a prime opportunity for us to protect this neighborhood. That's all I got. Any
Thank you, Wade.
questions for me?
Any questions for Wade or Scott this morning?
I have a general curiosity question again. The 35 feet versus a 20 feet setback on either side of the road. What's the logic or technology behind that? I guess I need to understand.
I'm not sure. Maybe Michael would have an answer to that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I did have a conversation with the HOA. Understand, City of Bismarck, the back of, the setback, it's changed in their current ordinance. They've a lot of different things, but the history behind it. The setback in the City of Bismarck is 25 feet behind the lot line. Okay, it's not behind the curb, it's behind the lot line. The lot line happens to be behind the back of sidewalk, which means you have a 4 to 6 foot boulevard, and you have another 4 to 6 foot sidewalk. Well, let's just say it's 10 feet between the two, 6 foot on the, especially on a corner lot, which I have. So you got 6 feet and 4 feet, so you got 10 feet. And then you have another 25 feet, which is 35 feet, which is where this ordinance basically probably was set on. Obviously, Tolman Engineering created the PUD, and that 35 feet was set based on that. So that's where the set scenario is. Talk to the HOA out there. This is a well-traveled street. It's almost like a collector out there, which means they've got some safety concerns, which leaves that distance important to them. Firmly understand where Wade was talking about. The inside's 25 feet and the outside's 35 feet. Do I think there's some ability for conversation there? Yeah. Can it be 35 feet from the back of curb? I'm not so sure you could put it that close. There'd be some discussion on that from a safety perspective. But there is a little bit of flexibility there. On the other side of it, absolutely, I agree with Wade, the standpoint that this area should have been stabilized a long time ago. But here's my concern, changing guard or not, just like you had on Hogue Island, this should not be done as individual property owners stabilizing their individual bank on individual permits, because the Corps is going to look at this just like you had at McDowell Dam. The minute you went over 300 lineal feet, it was an individual permit. This should be dealt with as an entire project from one end to the other in order to properly protect this property and put it into the protected zone, protected category for the county ordinance. And from this perspective, I'd be very comfortable on behalf of this board recommending to this board that if in fact that stabilization were to put in place, that you could support that 75-foot change. Now, as I understand this, Mitch, because it's a PUD, it's not really a variance anymore. It's a change in the PUD. So from a terminology, it's a modification of the PUD for that setback. And there's two modifications that are in place. One's for the bank stabilization, which this board is involved in. The internal one at 35 to 25 or whatever that was, it's really not this board's purview or jurisdiction. That would come to planning and zoning and what the comfort level is on that side. So Wade, I appreciate the comments.
Question, Michael, maybe you know or not, but what's going on with the protection, upstream of lot 27 and downstream of lot 32? Just trying to understand.
Correct.
With this, if they were to get approval for continuous, bank stabilization and protection with riprap from 27 through 30, would there be a continuous protection line there?
You would not be continuous. It's interesting because there's a number of things that go on with the river, just to be honest with you. The entire reach along here was not to be stabilized under the original Misty Waters permit. There are areas that are stabilized, and they've happened two ways. One is that property owner, developer, whoever put material on the top of the bank, and when the bank eroded, the material fell into the river. The stabilization's now there. There are also areas where I would venture to say, I do not have any specific background on it, where the landowners protected their property on their own and didn't get a permit, not unlike what happened at Hogue Island. From the standpoint of this, if you want to call it newly protected area, the design of this would be fairly straightforward. There would be a refusal at the upstream side regardless as to what's happening upstream. That refusal would probably go from 25 to 50 feet inland to prevent the water from cutting in behind should in fact some erosion occur at the upstream end. And the downstream end, I wouldn't be too much concerned about. That kind of goes back into the access channel for the entrance to the Misty Waters, which is protected. So,
Looking on Google Earth, there appears to be some maybe landowner initiated protection, and maybe some more organized protection, but.
correct. Okay. But again, from a standpoint, if you build the northern piece of this, if you will, with a proper refusal from a design perspective, this reach could be easily stabilized. It's not going to be inexpensive, but you could stabilize it to meet that protected status.
Yeah, just going through what we saw at Hogue Island, I mean, this is nothing to be trifled with. I mean, we saw protected banks erode 10 to 20 feet in a matter of days. And that's what concerns me here, is that what sort of level of protection is going to be out there for these likely very expensive homes. And like I said, we saw firsthand how quickly an ice flow, you get an ice jam out there and it shot that water right to that bank, and within days it was gone. And we had revetments that were out there that are part of Burleigh County's oversight, and those were taken out. And these are massive rock structures that were gone. And I was just reminded again of the power of the Missouri River, and when it's flowing across these banks, and you get ice jams and things happen, and sandbars form and flow gets redirected. That's why we're having these conversations, Scott, and we're taking this very serious. So appreciate your time today, and appreciate your additional information. I'm going to ask the board if there's any other additional questions for Scott and or Michael and or Mitch before we kind of.
Do you know, Scott, all the landowners you kind of noted here on the plans, are they willing to put together a collective protection?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm speaking on behalf of
27 to 32?
Yes.
Yep.
We've talked to all of them.
Honestly, just speaking up, here, I think for this board, I think we'd want to see that. I think we'd want to see that there is a plan for this, an approved plan by the Corps, by the state. I'm also concerned about the design, and I'd want to make sure Michael would have some input on that, on what we're actually looking for the design. And we haven't gotten into the details on that as well, but making sure this is, not necessarily Corps approved, Michael, but there's definitely things that we'd probably be interested in seeing if we're going to even consider this, what sort of protection is going to be out there. But
Yeah, and I think on the bottom line of this, from the standpoint, and I'm not the board, you are, but from your technical perspective, if in fact that permit from the Corps covered all these lots, the design was there, they actually authorized that permit, looking at the expense side of the equation, understanding the development investment, I would think at that point in time, this board could recommend to planning and zoning that the 75-foot setback modification to the PUD would be reasonable.
Yep.
You would not address the other side of the equation, but you'd address that 75. Also, two items, I think I mentioned one before, is that on the notification of the PUD, the entire property owners within that PUD be notified as part of the process. The other equation of that is that no permits be issued until the stabilization is physically in place. So, two caveats to that approval. But I think from this board's perspective and from our technical review, we would be able to recommend that to you for that, to support that revision to P&Z.
yeah, and Scott, we're just kind of speaking in terms here. This isn't like, as Michael said, hasn't been voted on or decided. But that's,
Sure.
I don't know, Dennis, you got any thoughts as well? But that's kind of what we're thinking here, Scott. Is is likely something we could consider, but there's probably some additional steps before we get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, just clarification of responsibilities, and maybe Mitch needs to come up here again as well, but, it's PUD, it's outside of our responsibilities and authority. we obviously have a horse in the race, because if things go south, we tend to get involved, and not without some significant effort in our involvement too, as we saw up at Hogue Island. So I guess, I think this is a good discussion. I don't know that we are able to take any type of action that would be germane to the process, at least at this point, Mitch. But if a PUD would be considered for amendment, we can offer comments to that process, but that's the extent of it, I think.
The other side, Mr. Chairman, just as background, you will be requested from the standpoint of the DWR to comment on the individual permit for design. So you'll have that opportunity as well.
If
through
and
that
when one
process.
shows up, yeah.
Right,
Yep.
if one is submitted, correct.
With this nationwide, Scott, are they looking at doing individual nationwide permits for each lot then?
I think
For
this
the
is why
bank
this is-
stabilization?
Sorry, I think this is why this is really good conversations to have, and respect your guys' opinions, what you've seen and what you know, because I didn't know the developer or those lot owners when I got into this and closed on the lot back in March. But in January, when I started the conversations with the state and the Corps for those bank stabilization permits, and then ultimately applied and got approved, I didn't know who they were, and I didn't know this history. I didn't know any of this. So that's why I applied individually. And then as this kind of grew and we heard about setbacks and I got denied for the building permit in June, it really ramped up all of these conversations, and I got to meet the other lot owners. So I guess I would assume that they're going to do them individually. And then we would combine and do the whole bank stabilization together.
Okay. Good.
And I think from that standpoint, Scott, the Corps of Engineers is going to look at this as a single permit, not individual permits, because of the context of the.
That's what I wonder if
ruling.
that's where it's gonna go,
Yeah.
Michael, and then you said then that brings in Omaha.
Yes.
Yeah, so you'll need, he's right, you'd be a better advantage to come in with a package, a project versus
Yeah.
individual
Okay.
applications. You just would, it'd be a lot more efficient and be probably better received, I think.
And it's gonna take time.
Yeah.
It's gonna take time.
As soon as Omaha's there, it just takes time, even more time. Yep.
Yeah. We just, obviously having a buildable footprint is our end goal.
Yeah.
But without hearing like support of having the PUD altered at all, so we can get that building footprint to stabilize. I mean, we're not going to stabilize it and then to get that 75 foot, and then the development and the county is going to have an absolute nightmare in the upcoming high water events, as well as all those residents. So it's in everyone's best interest. So.
Yeah, I think, Scott, we clearly, I think, understand where each side's coming from. And,
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
here to continue to review and work
Yep.
with you and the other landowners on their lots, and tough situation, I'm sure. So, yeah, we're willing to continue the conversation and
Great.
Keep Mitch updated and keep this board updated on next steps and kind of see where this goes. But, Michael, one thing I was gonna, the flow that's shown here for the 33,000 in the elevation, has that been verified? I don't know if that.
Okay, a couple things on that. The 33,000 CFS was a determination by the county through this water resource district and myself as to the projected level of
Right.
the ordinary high water mark. In other words, how can you do this anywhere along the river relatively simply and actually include it in an ordinance? So that's where that number came from. That's been relatively confirmed with the State Water Commission and Amy. It'll go up and down, 6 inches or a foot maybe at most, based on what's physically out there, which is what DWR will determine. But that gives a basis for decision process going forward.
Okay.
It's not a dramatic difference, but it's a good picture, and it's been confirmed with DWR consistently. So.
Okay, so but at this location, that results in a 1632, I think that's 0.1.
Real close, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
We're getting down to feet here, so I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that that's been, if Tolman, your engineer, has verified that, that's fine.
And I think Amy.
I don't want to get too far down this now, so
Yeah.
somebody realizes, oh gosh, it's
Yeah.
1630.
DWR, I believe, was actually out there, and Amy set something on the bank as to where the elevation is. I don't know if Tolman actually picked up that, but DWR has set their point out there.
Okay.
Is my
Even-
understanding.
Even better.
Yes.
Yeah, if there's an actual survey.
Correct.
Okay.
And of course, that will also apply to all the other lots, because that, it's a
Exactly.
meandering line. So there may be need to actually request DWR to come out and set that ordinary high water mark by each lot, so that from a design perspective, like we did on Hogue Island, that it's compliant. Okay?
Scott, did we answer your question at this point?
Yeah, you
Okay.
did. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Really appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time, yep.
Thank you.
Mitch, do you have anything else? That
I think at this point, the variance kind of would be on hold. I think that the processes has to go through the amendments to the PUD first, and whether or not these owners want to go through the cost of stabilizing that bank.
Yep.
And I think there are a lot of steps in front of this just to get an approval or denial on this variance, so.
So, Mitch, who would initiate an amendment to a PUD?
That would be the property owner.
Comes at a request from a property
Yeah,
owner?
we'd have to get the latest PUD, the latest changed PUD, and get with the property as a homeowners association will have to be involved, and then we'd have to present that to the planning commission.
And I can tell you, the homeowners association is aware of this. I met with them on Monday evening just to kind of go through some, at their request, said, hey, come in and fill us in. So it would be a request not unlike the last change of the PUD, where there were like 8 or 9 lot residents contiguous with one another that requested that modification and processed that way.
Okay. No, that sounds, I would agree, Mitch. That kind of sounds like good next steps, and just keep us posted. And, anytime, Scott, you got questions, certainly through Mitch or us, reach out. We can try to help best we can.
I want to thank this board for this.
Yeah, you bet. Yep. Thanks, Mitch. Okay. I think we got through those items then. We can move on to financial reports. Manager Reed?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, board members, page 48 is 49, the balance sheet in your packet. We'll just go through some summary of the activities in the last month. So we had a starting balance in our checking account of $656,675. Paid bills in the amount of $105,820. Had income in the amount of slightly under $24,000, which included a small amount, $3,000 real estate tax, $4,400 in state aid. Large portion of that was McDowell Dam income in the amount of slightly over $16,000. So ending balance is about $574,800 in checking. Bravera Wealth, as you recall, we transferred money over into that account, so that began in the month with about $4,027,000. Had net income of interest in amount of $11,650, so we ended about $4,038,500 in the Bravera Wealth account. Reserve fund balance still essentially the same, slight change there. So total assets, we have $5,327,020.77 in cash and other holdings. So with that, I would move for approval of the balance sheet as presented, unless there are questions.
Second. Okay, got a motion by Manager Reap and a second by Manager Manger to approve the balance sheet for this month. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Wendy, take roll call vote, please.
Manager Mager.
Yes.
Manager Mitchell.
Yes.
Manager Reap.
Yes.
Manager Smith.
Yes.
Chairman Landenberger.
Yes, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, board members, page 50 and 51 is profit and loss statement for the month of July. Numbers look okay. I would recommend approval, move for approval as presented.
Okay.
Second?
Got a motion by Manager Reap and a second by Manager Manger to approve the profit and loss statement for this month. Any discussion or questions? Not seeing this morning. Wendy, take roll call vote.
Manager Mager,
Yes.
Manager Mitchell,
Yes.
Manager Reed,
Yes.
Manager Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Landenberger.
Yes, motion passes. Profit and loss is approved.
Mr. Chairman, board members, the statement of securities, pages 52 through 54, that's bolded in your agenda. We really don't need to take any action. It's for information. But if there's any questions, we can certainly discuss.
Looks good.
And then the last item is MRCC O&M account audit. I know Wendy and Mike, with the assistance of Michael, went through and did an updated audit of the Missouri River Correctional Center finances and the need to establish an O&M account. And so maybe I'd just ask either Wendy or Mike to fill in with some of the details. I don't know that I have enough to fully address them for the board.
Yeah, I think I'll touch on it for Wendy, because I went back and looked through all the transactionals, and then we typically, at the end of a project, create a memorandum that says, okay, based on all the expenses that have incurred, here is what the starting balance in the O&M account should be. Well, at that point in time, based on turnovers with Wendy and others before her, that account never got established. So there was about $3,700 to $3,900 in that account, if you will, on paper, but the account was never created. So then there had been expenses since that time for maintenance, for going back to MRCC. There's been a number of things that have been going on down there. And all those expenses have continued to accumulate. What that amounts to is there's a negative balance, obviously, in the O&M account. It's not actually established yet. So what Wendy and I talked about doing is basically going back in the books, if you will, creating the account with the original balance, subtracting off all the expenses, and then you'll come up with a negative balance. And then the request here is for us to go back in and actually create a special assessment district like you do for Burnt Creek and everything else, to raise funds to offset that negative balance and actually put it into a positive side at some point. So between now and October 30th, you'd have an account that would basically set up, okay, county auditor, there'll be a special assessment on these properties for X number of dollars for 26, probably for 27. I don't know what it's going to take to get it into the, out of the arrears and get it into a positive standpoint.
So
But,
right in that balance, negative balance, it is on page 49 of your packet as well. It's slightly over 13,000 roughly.
Right.
So
Yep.
Do we have an idea, Michael, what should be an amount that we have in there? I mean, we're spending probably a few $1,000s a year.
Yeah, typically, well, you can go back and the actual O&M expenditures, sometimes a little bit more than that, but I like on the other, I shouldn't say this board on the other projects typically has about at least a 3 to 5 year window of reserve funds.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're not doing a special assessment every year, to replenish those funds.
So somewhere between maybe 10 and 15,000.
Probably. And I don't know what can actually be raised at this point in time, because I have not finished the spreadsheet, kind of waiting for this meeting for
Okay.
authorization to do that. But we will have next month, and we'll tell you what that is. And there'll be a draft letter to the auditor for that amount, and then probably direction or request to the auditor to put this in place for 1 year, because each year, because of the valuation changes, each year it would be a new assessment for a different amount of dollars. Just like like you're doing on Burnt Creek. But we would set the first one up for this year, and you'd see that draft in September, and then submittal to county auditor in October.
So just for Chuck and Brian's, understanding here, this is the MRCC, it was part of the flood control for Bismarck, and this is an existing project. There is an assessment the district set up for that. And so this be going back to that same, how many landowners were there, like?
There's probably like 45 in here or so.
Yeah. So, get some additional kind of history there, what's going on.
Yeah.
just
And as background, Fox Island has a very similar assessment district that's set up.
Yep. And you see we have a pretty healthy O&M account there.
Right.
For Fox Island, yep.
So just, since 2020, there really hadn't been a huge amount of charges, but ultimately about 6,000 to 7,000 since 2020.
Right.
Okay.
So it slowed down. I mean, right after initiation of the project and finalization, there was probably some cleanup through warranty period or whatever, but it's been relatively minor since.
Right, and then we had one account over there where they had an electrician that wanted to go under.
Yep.
That, we needed to make sure that that was being done properly. And then, of course, they had the request where they were looking at a water line next to the levee. Those are the types of things that are ongoing. The actual, and then, of course, you got the maintenance inspection, which is a cost.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I think it's just a matter of getting the account established and then a small reserve and going from there.
Okay. So consensus with the board to have Michael put that information together maybe for next month or the next month after, whatever. But,
Okay.
and then at that point, we'll have actual action at that
Right.
point, so, yeah.
Do we have consensus to already start that account? Do we need that?
Well, generally speaking, that probably happened a long time ago. It's
Part
just
of the
because of the changeover in
part of the
the accounting
resolution.
side that it just never got done.
Was it part of the resolution of when we did the special assessment
Yep.
district in
I
the first
would-
place?
That's kind of what I recall.
I would believe it's probably part of that.
So on the
Either
book
way-
side, it's there. It's
Yeah.
just-
Yep.
yeah, we
It's
didn't
just
actually
not been
do the formal.
implemented.
Yeah.
And you didn't notice it until all of a sudden you were in arrears and going, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
So,
Nope.
it's
Okay.
all money that's in the same account, it's just a matter of putting it in
Yeah, it's all been
the
tracked,
category
yeah.
that needs to be
Yeah.
in place.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so, yeah, you got another question?
Oh, I was just looking to see whose name it fell under on the board. It looks like it's yours.
Okay, all right, there you go. That's, I'll take that for you.
I dodged a bullet.
But I'm there too, so I'm right behind you.
Okay. All right, consensus then, Houston, take a look at that and we'll
Yep.
come back next month, okay. Thank you. All right, that it for financial reports, Dennis?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, we can move on to item 9, drainage permits and complaints. This morning, Michael, I doubt there's an update on Keelboat, but,
No, nothing new at this point.
and Casey's not here, so I don't think there's much of an update on Hawk Tree at this point. How about Long Lake Refuge?
Long Lake Refuge, and I can touch on this for Roger. Roger, jump in if I miss anything. We had a call with the 2 regional hydrologists from Denver. It was a really good call. I put the summary meeting together and sent that out here just this last week. They are understanding of the issues. They're willing to look at it. They're going to be out here doing some field work in September to look at options to, change their management and or modify the structures. So it was a good meeting and good discussion, and I would say there's good progress. We are in the process of sharing information back and forth. They created a share folder. We've got some information that from our side that we put together we can share with them, and they're going to share their information the other way as well. We gave them a couple suggestions on the, if you want to call it the structural side and management, and they were appreciative of that as well. So, Roger, I don't know if I missed anything or not.
I think we talked a little bit about the whole goal would be to lower Long Lake a bit, and we understand that there might be some downstream concerns, so we wanted to make sure that they understood that those drawdowns would be conditional on the ability for the receiving channels to take those flows. And I did mention that I thought they would be more palatable to downstream landowners if there was some flood storage then that attained in the reservoir. They didn't commit to that, but obviously there would be some flood storage, if they lowered it and they had some, and depending on the structure, there's, I don't know, we'll see how that shakes out. But I had made that comment to him.
Okay. On a related note, I did meet with Houston and Josh with, how you say his companies?
Verticon.
Perticon?
Yeah.
If you remember, Josh came to our meeting a couple months ago, and he had some invoices, and so we sat down with Josh and we talked through that a little bit of, what his time was for, what benefit that was to the board and associated with this project, and then, of course, the Stutzman project that's moving forward. And what we came to an understanding was that he was to be under a contract with Houston as a subconsultant, and then we walked through those invoices and charges and determined what I felt was viable, for our payment. And then that is what now is included in this month's bills. So
Yeah.
Houston and I went through that with Josh and
Right.
got to an agreement, so.
He is under contract now with us for that work, and you'll see the modifications that we made that he's concurred with,
Yeah,
so.
yep. Just want to update the board on that, so. Along those lines, Mike, any update on the Stutzman project and where that?
Yeah, Crystal Springs Watershed Initiative, it continues to go on. We've had a number of issues relative to discussions with BNSF. BNSF is doing a geotechnical evaluation of its rail bed to see how much they can raise it, obviously, because, they have to look forward. We've had discussions with irrigators relative to use of water for irrigation. We've also had discussion with the congressional delegation relative to potential funding from the federal side, and there are potential federal programs that would be involved that might get funds, but obviously none are funded now because of the way the federal government's operating.
Yeah.
But it's slowly moving forward,
Okay,
so a
Thank
lot
you.
of positive notes.
okay. Any other questions regarding Long Lake?
I will stay also from the standpoint of the discussion with Long Lake. They basically said, we understand that the Crystal Springs project is out there, and we would look at whatever we're doing, the ability to accommodate those waters if they come.
Okay,
So they were really open to that, which was appreciated.
okay. Michael, you still planning to leave at 10?
Yes.
Okay.
I get probably 10 minutes and I need to
Okay,
run, so.
let's get through a couple items here
Okay.
quickly then for you, because next one, the Ponderosa Riverside Village subdivision, some violations there.
Okay, there's a lot to this. I did send out a summary of the minutes, the Teams meeting. There's a lot of people on that Teams meeting. I will step through this one as quickly as possible, not trying to get into details because there's a lot of nuances that are out here. The jurisdictional parties, obviously, Mitch and the Burleigh County Floodplain Administrator. Mitch has issued a cease and desist order for the work that's been done in the sovereign lands area because it didn't have a floodplain development permit and or a floodway no rise certificate. There was a 10-day deadline for response. There was no response. There was a 30-day deadline for appeal period. There was no appeal. So that action will continue. The scenario is with all the multiple jurisdictions here, Dave is involved in this conversation as well, that probably don't take any formal action on next steps until all the parties are on board as to what those next steps are.
Yep.
From that standpoint, Sovereign Lands and Amy Winkleman, Amy has been out there on site. She's looked at what was done. They have issued a cease and desist order that went through the Sheriff's Department for delivery. Prior to that, Game and Fish actually issued a citation for the damages on Sovereign Lands. That's part of the process and the agreement they have with the DWR. And Mr. Howard's actually paid that citation or paid that fine. So that's kind of an acknowledgement that he did what he did. So right now, Amy is looking at two different items. One is a administrative order to restore the damages done, if you want to call them that, on the riverbed. The second administrative order would be to restore the revetment and the damages that occurred to that revetment. In that discussion, obviously, Corps of Engineers is issuing a letter for cease and desist because of Section 408, because of the damage to the federal structure. Didn't get as much of a full-rounded picture as to what their activities might be and what their enforcement actions might be. But obviously, from the revetment standpoint, the district is on the hook, if you will, for 50% of the maintenance of that structure. The DWR was talking about that and saying, hey, it looks like because of the prior structures that they've worked with the board on, that if a restoration occurred on that, they'd probably do it similarly, having the Water Resource District do the design and implementation and then just share the costs. On that, there's an issue that Dave and Amy and others will be looking into from a legal perspective, is that all of this work was done off Mr. Howard's property. It was done on sovereign land. That being said, the state has the ability, in our understanding of the meeting, to actually assess for damages. In other words, if they go out and repair something and the landowner does not pay, they have the ability to assess the property for those damages. So you've got two different things going on. One is sovereign lands, the other is the revetment. So there's got to be kind of a, if you want to call it a joint powers discussion as to how to recover those costs if the landowner just doesn't write the check. The other component is, and Amy suggested this, this probably would be nice because they're concerned, as are others, about just having the landowner go out and do this and restore it, to have control over the restoration, which means you'd have a design and specifications and everything else, and possibility of the state contracting through the district with Houston Engineering to do that work, to make sure that it gets done adequately. Obviously, there's a lot of discussions from the administrative orders and stuff that has to be issued to the landowner, so the landowner understands what their obligation may or may not be relative to the final project of restoring that property. So that's it in a nutshell. We are looking at getting some information to Amy. Amy's looking at getting information back to us, sharing the documentation, finding out where the Corps is at. And as soon as those administrative orders are issued, then have another meeting to put everybody back on the same page and see who does what at this stage going forward.
Okay, so at this point, no action for this board?
Correct, but it is, bottom line, it's a fairly egregious impact. I mean, it's a large area, and the state DWR is looking at their administrative order for restoring the site.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Any questions for him on that? Appreciate the update, and keep us informed.
Mr. Chairman, if I just have a couple of comments. I talked to Amy yesterday with regard to the administrative orders, and we really need to see the content, the scope and the breadth of those administrative orders so that this board has a good understanding of where the state's going with this. And like Michael said, there's no question, this is sovereign lands, this is in the state's lap, which is also good because they have enforcement authority that the district does not. And I thought the meeting was good, and I think we are proceeding. Just for the board's information, I included a 2005 AG's opinion in your packet. It discusses the public trust doctrine and how what is now DWR might want to look at the public trust doctrine. And to the extent that this water district is involved in Missouri River issues, it's important for this district to understand how this law has been, this doctrine has been interpreted over the years. Short and sweet, they have allowed for certain exceptions to what is otherwise a pretty lockstep Missouri River. It's ours, it's public trust, don't touch it. There have been cases where a marina or something else has been allowed, but it's few and far between, and it's case by case.
Okay.
So, Dave, you said you included that in our packet?
Yes.
I don't know that I saw it or see it.
I don't see it.
I haven't seen it either.
Really, I'll look.
One more thing.
Oh, you're correct. It was an email. I didn't put it in the packet.
Yep.
Gotcha. One more thing on that issue. I mean, I heard that there's a potential that we are going to get obligated to do some work, and so I would maybe ask and suggest we have a board member present at the next meeting of the mines, meeting of the agencies.
Yeah, I think we've been invited. There was probably just there was one that I couldn't attend.
Given the access or given the context of as many people as you can get there.
Sure. Yep.
We just held it to have a conversation, but I agree with you, Dennis, that board needs to be at the next ones.
Yep.
Was there a meeting outside of the one I was?
For the violation?
Oh, for the violation.
Yeah, for the violation, no.
Yeah.
And I think I emailed a summary of that one.
Gotcha.
But
Okay. Any other discussion? Michael, maybe just quickly, then you can go if you have any updates on the Apple Creek slide.
yeah, a couple of things on that. Travis and I have been working on the EAP, and that it's taking a little bit longer and it's probably a little bit more involved than we probably first thought as far as the notices goes, but working back with Mary Sanger, I think we got a pretty good stance as to where that's going to be and put together. On the actual layout, we will be doing a final LiDAR flight here sometime in August, so they can do a comparative between the original flight in the spring and the one now. Things are still moving out there, though there is a indication of the pore pressure or the water in the embankment slide that's on a continuous decline. That may be because we're in a drought.
Yeah.
That may be because of the soils actually starting to stabilize. Those are things that we don't know, but we're continuing to monitoring. The end of the grant period is obviously the end of August, which will kind of close out, and there'll be recommendations. There will be recommendations on an alternative that will be continued monitoring. So that if you want to call it, we have a security system on, so if we know that the failure occurs, we can actually respond to that failure. And what those costs are going forward will be part of the final report.
And I think at that point too, it'd be maybe some meetings with, University of Mary.
Correct. Yep.
It's actually their property.
Yeah, and then to put that back in place.
Yeah, okay.
So it's moving forward. There's still some things out there that need to be ironed out. We've had a number of requests to, for the various alternatives, and we'll put those in the cost request or the invoices as to what those additional little works were.
Okay.
To come up with an alternative.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Any questions for Michael on Apple Creek slide? Okay.
With that, I'm going to slip out. Travis is here. He can talk about the
Hogue Island.
The Hogue Island stuff, because he's primarily working on that piece. So,
okay.
Appreciate your indulgence on my needing to slip away.
Yeah. Safe travels.
Yep.
Okay, we can move on to the number 11 there, projects, item A, Hogue Island stabilization. I don't know, Travis, if you've got few updates for us this morning.
So I'm gonna take here and go up to the podium.
There would be just fine.
All
Yep.
right. Okay.
See you, Michael.
Okay, regarding the Section 32 structure at Hogue Island, where we've got the settlement issue, the initial scope for the cost share request on that one included a site investigation, a survey of both the ground surface and the bathymetry out in front of that site for the river bottom, and then a geotechnical investigation and report, and then basically in that report a summary of findings, and then a design recommendation for a remedy for this site. And so far we've accomplished that. We've got a report from Braun Intertech that has a couple of different design options. I had a meeting with them and requested them to give multiple levels of design, or recommendations, for kind of low, medium, and high, response to this issue, and give options so that the board can decide just how much effort and expense you want to invest in this to try to stabilize that, and then essentially you get those efforts, and then that increases your level of confidence in those efforts as well, depending on how much effort. And Houston Engineering has reviewed those recommendations, and essentially we're going with that mid-level, like the option 2 that was in the report. I've emailed you the report. I don't think the report didn't make it into this packet, but I did email everybody that final report showing what that option is. And right now the current recommendation, kind of a consensus between us, Houston Engineering and Braun, is that for a high enough level of confidence in the remedy for that settlement issue, but also being reasonable effort and keeping design and construction costs within a fair level, is to remove that settled area, do kind of an excavation in the area that appears to be settling and staying behind that Section 32, kind of on the back side of it, so that we're not getting out into the water, because the actual surface or the face that in the water of that revetment that's there, it does appear to still be intact. So for lack of a better term, I don't want to really break the seal on that. I want to keep that protection intact and then just stabilize the ground behind it. So looking at removing soil behind it down to a depth of just above the water table, a foot or two, and then placing the material back with a fabric and geogrid reinforcement in lifts to reinforce that soil mass behind there and try to stabilize that and try to increase the factor of safety on that in geotechnical terms, so that it stabilizes it and tries to sequester that movement so that things stay put, and then we can keep an eye on that. And also excavating that will allow us to see what is underneath there, and if there's a certain type of material, if we find something that's that appears to be the culprit, and we can visualize that and we can address that too if we need to make a little bit of a modification to the work, to address something unexpected that we might find in that excavation. So currently, that's where we're sitting right now, is we've got the report, we've got recommendations for a remedy to this, and then the next steps would be to, agree on what the remedy is, and then proceed with a final design and then permitting for that work. So we couldn't really pursue permitting until we knew what the work was going to entail, so that we knew which permits would be needed and be able to describe the work in those permits. So as I emailed you guys, my recommendation now would be for the board to take a look at what those options are, kind of come to a consensus on what you think we would want to pursue on that, and then give direction to proceed with that.
Any questions or thoughts for Travis? So there were 2 emails, Travis, with some different attachments.
The second email
Well, it just has photos.
was for the Roger Jonas property, which
Oh,
we
okay.
would do that in conjunction with this. If we're going to make a project, then we could attach that, essentially roll them into a single project with, have one contractor. We can do the permits concurrently and have something to address some of the erosion issues that are happening up just north on that Jonas property as well, where we've got an existing revetment that appears to have some erosion on the upstream end of that has a potential to compromise the integrity of that windrow revetment there on the bank. They're just adjacent to Jonas property, and then also that one hard point that is seeing some erosion, and there was some scour on the back side of it, so that is being compromised as well, and it's kind of been reduced from what it originally was. Some of the end of it that protrudes farthest out into the river has been lost and has settled down, and there's been some scour and some erosion on that structure.
Okay. So in Braun's geotech report, they don't provide any sort of recommendation?
Brown's report was just evaluating
Right.
the section 32 on the Hogue Island one on the Dave Scheider lot. They didn't evaluate the ones up farther north on the Roger
Right.
Jonas property, because that's not really a geotechnical issue. That's just a straight
Right.
scouring and surface erosion issue.
No, I get that. So where are these options, though, that you talked about? You said there was and you were going to...
In the geotechnical report, it's in section 3 where it is titled, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I just know that it's
15 of 36 in that geotech.
it's slopes.
Oh, there it is, slopes to stabilization options.
Yeah, it's
okay.
like on page 11, I believe.
15.
And they don't give any pricing?
Oh, 11 of their.
No, I think they would leave that to me to try to do some
Sure.
estimating for those potential options based on, because these options, they also don't really give any quantities. Well, they've got some quantities, but taking a look at the site, I would revise those quantities a little bit, just based on site conditions out there. For example, they described doing something 120 feet wide, which would also involve removal of a large cottonwood tree and kind of go beyond where I think we need to go, because we don't want to start tearing and demoing stuff like that. I would just want to stay within the area where we see the evidence of settlement.
So at this point, would it be, best for us to say, okay, Houston, why don't you go and develop some costs and some next steps for, if we just agree that there's consensus on this option 2, this GeoGrid reinforcement option?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what you're recommending, Travis?
Yeah, the option 2 was the general way that we're looking at proceeding, doing a little bit of a modification from what they've got, because we don't want to remove all of the rock on the face of that. I kind of want to start, on the top edge and then cut back right behind that and then reinforce that, and then again see what we find when we get in there. That way we don't have to get out into what, I want to stay behind the sovereign lands line, so that'll remove one permit that we have to go, and then also simplify the core permitting on it as well, because we're going to be modifying an existing core structure, and then just kind of keep the scope of the work so that that'll reduce your costs, it'll reduce some of your timeline for permitting, it'll reduce some of the permitting requirements, and I think it'll still give us an effective solution or something to address what we've got there. Plus also, like I said, the excavation will allow us to see what's underneath there, and maybe if we have something that is obviously causing that, we can do a shift to address that.
Okay. Any questions or thoughts, or is there consensus on doing that? Dennis, you gotta,
I'm just trying to tie it into the Jonas one, the second one. And so that is not a section 32 alignment. Is that fair, Travis?
The Jonas property up there just to the north, that is a section 32 hard point that he initially called us on because there was a scour occurring right behind that hard point that was excavating a hole behind it, and we're starting to see rock failures and falling off into that hole from that hard point. And also that hard point was, the tip of it was also being eroded and falling into the river as well. So that is, in addition, that's a section 32
So
structure.
that would also be eligible for a not automatic, but a 50% cost share with the state?
Yes.
And I'm asking just, your second email talks about rolling them into one effort, which certainly makes sense, right?
yeah, the contractor's already gonna be out there, yeah. Yep. Okay, so general consensus to have Travis and Houston kind of
Work out
develop some
option
costs,
two.
and, yep, next steps for option 2. Okay,
Yep, can do that.
I mean, I think your request in your email suggests giving you, having a motion to submit for cost share request?
Yeah, and I guess
kinda
that
like
would
to wait,
require
though.
us to have an estimate as well, so that we have an amount that we can go for. But
I think-
that's for construction costs, but we also have to do a pre-construction request
Right.
for the design and the permitting
Right.
tasks on
Right.
that, and then,
maybe we wait till next month on that?
Okay, it's just gonna, I mean, it could probably would be a director approval situation, but if you end up going to the full board meeting, then we're talking October before we get full consideration.
yeah, however you want to do that, if you want to kind of, like I said, pre-authorize it, once I provide the information, then you can give James the authority to approve it if it's within, whatever, however you guys want to decide that.
So, yeah, the next deadline is August 24th, and that's to get onto the October full agenda, if we need to go that route.
Ow.
If we wait, then we're into December's meeting. And I don't know if we need
What's that level? Is it 100, 150,000? 100,000?
100
Are we
typically.
under that, you think, Travis? But both combined, I bet you it's not.
Right, I think that's, yeah, we're gonna be there, and, looking at the excavation on this, I guess I don't have a real number in mind. I think initially I had an idea of, even, I think just the Jonas property with some of the rock and what we have put up there, that might end up being $50,000 on its own.
But I think, it's a pre-construction cost share request. And so
Yeah.
that's the number we would be dealing
Right, yeah,
with.
you're not
Not
requesting
definitely
construction
under
funds,
100.
you're just requesting the design and permitting.
Yeah.
So that would be,
Under 100,000.
right,
so.
that would definitely be under 100,000.
Okay, so I guess, what's the board's thoughts here? Do we want to have just Travis first go back and kind of do some initial analysis and get us some updated numbers for next month's meeting? Or do you want to go ahead and approve at this point to submit?
Well, I mean, in my mind, I think we're gonna do it anyway, right?
Right.
I mean, I would make a motion that we approve a pre-construction cost share application to the state
Okay.
for these two
For both.
situations, yeah,
Yep, both the Chider and Jonas.
under that section 32.
Okay. Got a motion by Manager Reap and a second by Manager Smith to approve or ask Houston to look at submitting for pre-construction and preliminary engineering costs for the design and ultimate construction of the two structure improvements at Chider and Jonas. Did you get that?
No.
Mostly? Okay. Any discussion?
Just one more thought is that in my discussions with them, at times they have a running total of director approvals for a particular effort, and you don't start over at zero. I mean, if we did this before, I don't know if we did or not, and we had $30,000 in State Water Commission money approved through a director's approval, that's where you start with your next request.
Oh,
So
okay.
just
Yeah,
Good
'cause
to know.
they don't like to see multiple requests to try to stay under that threshold.
Yeah.
They
If it's all related to one project?
right.
So I don't know if they would consider this one project or not, but, they might see section 32 and say, well, you were here before on one of these, right?
Okay, good thought. Okay, we have a motion and a second on that. Any other questions, thoughts? Wendy, take roll call vote, please.
Manager Mager,
Yes.
Manager Mitchell,
Yes.
Manager Reed,
Yes.
Manager Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Landenberger.
Yes, motion passes. Okay. Travis, you got good direction on that then?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have to, I like Mike's comment, you have to slip away from the meeting. I've got at 10 o'clock. But just an update on a couple things that are under
Yeah.
old business. We haven't heard anything on the withdrawal from Garrison Diversion for the county at all, and there's no public hearing scheduled. Our agenda for next Monday is due today noon, so I have not seen that yet. It won't come out till afternoon, but I don't think there's anything in the middle for that either. And our budget, our preliminary budget for the county was approved on last meeting's Monday night meeting, and nothing on the Water Resource District budget, nothing new, and I'm monitoring that. And as far as I know right now, no changes are going to be necessary. So
We get to keep our jobs.
you can keep your job. Well, you might get a reduction in salary, but we're still working on that. But that's it. That's the only report I have to make. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Well, I don't know, Mitch, if there's probably any update on the CRS, but I'm guessing not, but you can certainly address if you'd like to. You got a lot on your plate these last few weeks.
Yeah, and I took a 5-day vacation in the middle of it.
Oh, you got to squeeze one in. Well, good for you. That's
But
good.
it all falls apart. So. We're working on it. We're going through the documents. I'll have to talk with the county administrator for some of the steps moving forward on trying to fix the violations, the minor ones. Some of these people, they're not cooperative. They don't want to do another EC or pay for another EC and all this other stuff. So it's kind of, just a step-by-step process. I plan on, as soon as I get finished with all my emails and the massive amount of permits I've been issuing, and then I'll be back to it.
Okay.
Hopefully by the end of summer, I have a conversation with the county administrator moving forward on how to address those.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Mitch? Okay. Thank you, Mitch.
Yep.
All right. That gets us through old business. We can move on to new business this morning. In your packet there's a temporary water permit for the North Dakota National Guard. In addition, there's some another permit there for, trying to get back to the agenda here. What's the second one for? Oh, Bismarck Parks and Rec, that's right, yep. So pretty standard, pretty straightforward. Then we did add some additional items added on our new business. Maybe we'll start with item C, Dennis, summer meetings. I know you and Chuck attended, but.
Yeah, we attended the summer water resource meetings in Watford City. I don't know if I have anything in particular to share, but if Chuck does, that's.
Was it well attended? I mean, there was.
It was pretty well attended.
Yeah, I thought
good.
so.
Good.
Yep.
I mean, you maybe highlighted there was a discussion, frack water and water supply up there is a big issue, and there was a panel that was fairly interested on that. So
One of the interesting things was, initially when they started going lateral and horizontal boring and stuff to frack, they've gone from 1 mile to 2 miles, 3 miles, and now they're upwards of 4 miles.
Yeah.
Which is just insane.
That is.
Yep. So it was very interesting.
Good.
I mean, I think we've all maybe been at meetings where the state has presented, budget status, and especially as it relates to the Resources Trust Fund. That continues to, there's drilling locations that transfer into the, what's the term? Where they don't have to pay extraction tax.
The stripper well.
Stripper well, thank you. Yeah, and so that was interesting, and that was of particular interest to that group up there. So,
yeah, it's hard to believe now that we're kind of going on about 20 years of developing the Bakken for the third time, but yeah, it's kind of crazy. Okay.
The other, there's 2 other meetings I want to just make note of. One is North Dakota Water Users Association is hosting a series of regional meetings across the state. There is one next Thursday evening, August 20th, starting at 7 p.m. hosted by Bartlett and West offices. And so certainly would encourage attendance there. If you didn't get an invitation, I can certainly send you one, and it's possible you didn't, but those came out yesterday, I think. So check your emails, and maybe I'll just proactively send the invitation to you so you have the information.
Is there an agenda set up for that yet, Dennis?
I've seen a draft agenda.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything officially. I can certainly share that too, though. So yeah,
No, I think it'd be.
I'll do that.
Being it's at my office, I'm planning to attend, but yeah.
And that was next Thursday?
Next
Yes.
Thursday evening,
Yeah.
yes. And then the other one I will mention is Upper Missouri Water Association is meeting in Pierre, South Dakota, September 21st and 22nd. I'm on the board of that, and so I will attend and maybe just request concurrence that I attend through Burleigh County's expenses, certainly. And I can share that information with others if you haven't already received it too, if there's any interest. It's a small conference, but there's, specific to Missouri rivers, which I think is, very much of interest to this board. So I don't know if there's others, Roger, or anybody else that would be interested. It's a Monday, Tuesday.
Where at?
Pierre.
In Pierre.
South Dakota. So, like I said, I do intend to attend.
Okay. I'm good, with having Dennis attend and Spenstad, so.
Okay.
And certainly if there's anybody else that wants to go, yeah, okay.
So
All right. Before we move on to court case discussion, or maybe Dave kind of covered that a little bit earlier, but so the meeting in November, I'm going to be out of state on the 11th, well, that whole week, and we had moved it from the 11th to the 10th on Tuesday. Then I started looking at the December meeting, and the December meeting right now is scheduled for the Wednesday of the North Dakota Water Users Conference. So typically we move that one again. So what I'm proposing is we move November's to November 18th, and then December's to December 16th. And then they're still 4 weeks apart. So just want to make sure that works for most people's schedules.
November 18th?
Yeah, November 18th, that'd be a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
December 16th.
What's that? And then December 16th, yep. So then we wouldn't have to worry about trying to squeeze that in the week of the water users. It's kind of a busy week, so.
And it's outside of hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's showing up as the 18th, so did something already come out?
Yeah, we had changed that.
Okay.
We talked about it.
Yeah.
And then December?
16th.
Oh, okay, it's showing up as the 8th, so that'll get moved.
Yep.
Okay.
Fine by me.
Good with that? Okay.
Yep, I'm good.
I will make sure the room is available and stuff.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, we'll go ahead and plan for that, and then if the room's available, we'll kind of lock those in maybe next month then. Okay. I don't know, Dave, is there anything else you want to talk about with that court case?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just very, very briefly, this is a Trail County Water Resource District case, garden variety obstruction complaint between two landowners. Sean Fredericks and Onstead Twitchell were on board with representing Trail County. It took a long time. One of the landowners, Mr. Koenig, appealed it to federal court, got in federal court, and it was, Sean just let everyone know here recently that the case was finally finished. I forwarded to the board, it's not in your agenda, but I emailed a couple of things to you. One is the original complaint, just you see it on our forms. The other one is Mr. Koenig's 25-page complaint, which he had asked for $1 billion in damages from everybody. And Onstead Twitchell was sued, individuals of the Trail County Board were sued, and so forth. Two things I think we take away from it. One of the things I sent to you is the federal docket. I can't imagine anything more exciting than to read a federal docket. But if you glance to that, you'll see lots of motions from the defendants. They say motion to dismiss because there was no jurisdiction. Failure to state a claim. These things, we talk a lot in this board about the complaint service and filing. We have deadlines, we have ways in which we have to serve. And in the court's final ruling, basically, Mr. Kinney didn't serve these guys properly. So he was bounced out on that grounds. He was bounced out on jurisdictional grounds. All these things are sort of like the first round of a fight, where you're not going to get to the merits, and they never did get to the merits here, because everybody was bounced out and the case was dismissed before it got to really talking about the meat of the issue. That's not a bad thing, but it shows you the detail and the things you have to do if you're going to jump into court. That's sort of been the result, and my little sermon is, again, service. We've talked about this McDowell Dam, I think back in Fox Island. We just have to make sure that we've served properly, because it has a ripple effect down the line if we need to go there.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, really just kind of, there was like maybe a culvert obstruction or something that started this whole case. It seemed fairly minor for it
Yes,
just to.
pretty garden variety.
Right, things that we deal with all the time. So I think it's excellent point, Dave, just that these things can happen, and it's always good to have good legal representation, which we have, so.
Yep.
Good. Okay, any questions? Thanks, Dave. Okay, I think that does it for new business this morning. We can move on to item 14. Obviously, there's additional information with plats and stormwater management plans that are available there. You can see quite a list of different subdivisions and final plats that are there. One thing I will say to the board here this morning, I was having a conversation with Casey and Dan, the county engineer, about a potential drainage concern or complaint that might be coming through up north on River Road. So I think Dan and Casey were going to submit that for us, but it's a fairly simple one that we can work through, but it might be coming through here in the next week or two, so we can discuss that next month. But just kind of putting you guys on notice that it should be coming. So, and I did meet individually with, or myself with Casey and Dan, so I've got some background on that too. So when that comes through, if that gets assigned to you, Brian, we can certainly visit. I can kind of fill you in. The result of that may turn out that we have like an independent hydraulic review, maybe from Houston, because it's a crossing that North Dakota or Burleigh County designed and modified, and it's moving water onto a private. There's a oil pipeline that crosses River Road, and there's an above ground valve station, and it's kind of collecting some sediment, and they're having some water issues. So maybe just have Houston kind of do it. There's some kind of a swale or a redirect. We can move that water around. Be pretty simple, straightforward. But okay, okay. All right, we can move on to item 15 this morning. Approval of the monthly bills.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, board members, on page 57 is a summary of the bills. I don't know if I want to highlight any particular item there. I'd certainly stand for any questions on any of those invoices if you have any, if you had a chance to look at them. But as you're contemplating that, there was one other bill that we would like to add to this list. It's from Braun Intertech. It's related to the Hogue Island slope stability analysis. And if you're
is it Hogue Island or is it Apple Creek?
Hogue Island.
Oh, it is Hogue Island. Okay. Oh, it was. Okay, yeah.
And so, if you're keeping score at home, it's in the amount of $2,329.50. So with that, if you're amenable to adding that to the list, the total would then become $123,450.02.
Okay. You guys good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. All right.
So the math adds up. No questions. I move for approval of payment in the bills in the amount of $123,450.02.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion by Manager Reap and a second by Manager Mitchell to approve the amended amount for the bills this month. Any questions or discussion? Wendy, take roll call vote, please.
Manager Mager.
Yes.
Manager Mitchell.
Yes.
Manager Reap.
Yes.
Manager Smith.
Yes.
Chairman Landenberger.
Yes, motion passes. Bills will be paid. Okay, remaining items in your packet there, just some more detail on the monthly bills. And then next meeting is scheduled right now for Wednesday, September 9th at 8 a.m. in this room. Everybody here can attend. Roger, no fall fishing trips yet?
I did get myself coaxed into a fish fry that noon, so I'm gonna be anxious to get out when I'll be here.
Okay, very good. Okay, any other business? Other business before the board? We are adjourned.